What is up, guys? Mike Marlinsky here with Wretched Sound. Welcome back to the Black Sabbath podcast series. We are moving on to Black Sabbath's 14th studio album, Headless Cross. This is the second album with Tony Martin on vocals. I am very excited to get into this because I know how excited Billie Page is for this. Since first bringing Billie on board for this series, she has talked about nothing except the Tony Martin albums, Headless Cross in particular. So I know she is going to be leading the majority of this discussion, and I can't wait to just be educated by her in this regard. So without further ado, I'm going to give Billie a call, and we will get into this, I'm sure, energetic and enthusiastic discussion about Black Sabbath's Headless Cross. Stay tuned, and thanks for listening. Hello. It's Billie. How are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you doing tonight, Mike?
I am feeling great. I am very enthusiastic about tonight, and I know how much you've been looking forward to talking about this album in particular.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great one.
Yeah. So I guess I just want to make a little announcement, because we've been talking about doing this episode for the past couple weeks, so I've had a couple weeks to sit with the record, and I guess I'm going to officially say that Dehumanizer has been dethroned. It is no longer my favorite Black Sabbath album. Headless Cross is now my favorite Black Sabbath album, but Dehumanizer is a very close second. So that's the revelation that I had most recently. But if you're ready to dive right in, I am ready.
I'm ready.
All right, she's ready. Well, number one, first and foremost, so we are now 2 albums in with Tony Martin on vocals. And how do you perceive the progression of his vocals from Eternal Idol to Headless Cross?
I think they're much stronger and more confident. It makes a lot of sense because he wasn't involved with the Eternal Idol until the very end. He wasn't even the original singer for that. Now he's been in the band. He was involved with the making of this record.
Right.
And you can hear it. You can hear it in his delivery. Everything about it just sounds more powerful and more confident. And
he's more established.
Yeah, he's just he was the right person to have on this and to stick with. He's a great vocalist, and it really, really comes through on this album.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's a comfortability that I guess wasn't there with Eternal Idol because, maybe his role in that was a little rushed comparatively. But, like you said, Headless Cross got to be his baby as well. So, they all got to have fun with it. Okay, so this is Cozy Powell's first album on drums. And to me, his performance reminded me a lot of Bill Ward, given the signature stomp, beat, the fills, the classic rock and roll vibe, and the slightest bit of prog mixed in with the heavy keyboard elements. And we also have Cozy Powell to thank for Tony Martin staying on with the band because Tony Iommi's original plan was to try to get Dio back, evidently, is what I read. So, how did you, this is the first of 3 records with Powell, so how did you feel about the drum performance?
I think it's great. Again, I think there's a lot to be said about, even though I think most of this is attributed to Tony Iommi,
sure,
songwriting.
Yeah.
Just overall, it just sounds like a more confident record than the Eternal Idol did.
Yeah.
But again, it's easy to see why with kind of the problems with the Eternal Idol,
Mm-hmm.
And even the last couple albums before it seemed like, Tony Iommi kind of had a plan and it just kept getting sunk by the record label.
Right.
Being like, no, we want to still be Black Sabbath. And, there seem to be a lot of obstacles. And it seems like with Warner Brothers out of the way, yep, and on a new label that was just ready to be behind him,
It was a revolving door of members, too. The last couple records, it was, yeah.
And I think, like, with the musicians, to a degree, it didn't make as much of a difference for them. But, I mean, again, a band like Black Sabbath, a lot of people focus on is the singer. And this is the first album in a few that he had the same singer for a couple albums.
Yeah.
Which I think helps his songwriting, and I think all around it helps create better performances with the people around him. Cozy Powell definitely gives I would say, a better drum performance than the drummer, whoever, I can't remember who played drums on the last two albums, because it was a bit more stand out. Again, I feel like the rhythm section on this album still doesn't stand out like Bill Ward and Geezer Butler do.
No. That is a signature thing that is impossible to mimic or measure up to.
I'll say that about every album they're not on, but Cozy Powell definitely gives a very powerful, good drum. I mean, there's a lot of great, just driving drum parts on this album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and very heavy keyboard. It has a very heavy keyboard aspect to it that gives it this dark, this very dark, ominous feeling that perfectly complements the satanic nature of the lyrics that we'll get into a little bit more later. But yeah, I love the keyboards on this record too. They really stand out.
They really do, even when they're not supposed to. There's some parts where you really hear the keyboard. It's supposed to be front and center, and then there's parts where it's just under everything, but you hear it enough, and it really makes a huge difference in adding to the mood of the album. And it's fantastic. It's well done.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the album cover a little more later, but it has a sound, and I think the keyboards have a huge deal to do with this. The overall sound of the record complements the album cover as well. It sounds like the album cover. It sounds like the scene portrayed on the album cover. This is a very this is a very tight package of a record. Everything complements everything else. Everybody, down to the artist of the cover, everyone is on the same page on this album. And there's a nice feeling of solidarity that hasn't been there in a while. So this is Black Sabbath's first album on IRS Records, and I felt a certain raw energy on this record not present on other Tony Martin albums. And do you think that we just talked about, the confidence level and the comfortability with Tony Martin being on his second album and helping write this record, but do you think that raw energy also had to do with the label change?
I don't know if it would have anything to do with that. Maybe. I guess it's possible because it affected the budget, but I don't know how much. Because at that time, IRS Records was, they weren't a major label, but they weren't a small label.
I just didn't know if you knew about anything cooking behind the scenes with the bureaucracy and the music business aspect of it all that could have been a weight off everyone's shoulders when they changed labels.
Yeah, I'm sure that was. When I read about it, never really dived much into that, except, they left Warner Brothers and IRS was just told Tony Iommi, do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that helps. I don't know if it really, I think it helped affect the confidence.
Yeah, because I think you're right. You're right. I think that was exactly. You're right. I think that was exactly what they said to him. They said, "Well, we're not going to stand in your way because you know how to write songs and you know how to sell albums, so we're just going to let you do that."
Yeah.
Lawrence Cottle performed bass on this record. Interesting bit of backstory though. Geezer Butler nearly rejoined, but ended up doing a live tour with Ozzy instead. So how did you feel about the bass performance on this album? Was it in the pocket or stand out? See, I found it reminded me a lot of Geezer's performance on Heaven and Hell, given the amount of that Iron Maiden-esque trot that you hear throughout the majority of the album. And it's got that stomp that really complements what Cozy's doing on the drums.
Yeah, I mean, it's solid. Again, I'm not going to repeat myself and say exactly what I said about the drumming.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
But my one thing about that is I feel like the drumming stands out more on this album than the bass playing.
Mm-hmm. Sure. For sure. This went down in history as Black Sabbath's most quote-unquote satanic record. And Iommi had to tell Tony Martin to calm down on the devil stuff. And you and I know we've had many talks about this, and you and I both love this album lyrically. There is something innocent and playful about the lyrics on the album despite their nature. And what songs stand out to you the most lyrically on this record?
Well, the title track, Headless Cross, and I think Kill in the Spirit World is a really good one, too. Which, it's funny because I had no idea about Iommi considering Dio for this album, because in Kill in the Spirit World, that's a song that I could totally hear Dio singing.
Yes. What the great thing about that song is that it bounces back and forth between that really upbeat, kind of motivating rock and roll verse and that really dark, doomy, almost diminished chord progression that lays up to the chorus. And I don't know, like, when you listen to that song, it's almost like the roles are flip-flopped. Like, the dark, diminished section is the chorus, and, or rather, you would think that would be the verse, and the verse would be the chorus, because the verse is catchier than the chorus in that song. But that's what I love about... I just love the contrast between the two main sections in that song. It's like two completely different songs, two vibes mashed together. But when you listen to it beginning to end, it's a complete meal. And I love how they were able to just mash those two main riffs together and just form this beautiful thing. That's a great song. I just truly took that in and appreciated it today, actually, before calling you. I was really, really drinking that one in and really appreciating the drastic difference between the two main riffs. And the vocals, too, obviously. Like, when he breaks into the song title, and that dark riff is playing, and it's got that evil, like, eerie sound to it, and his voice is, like, echoing, kind of trailing off. And you're right, that would be a beautiful Dio moment. When Death Calls is an absolute banger. How did you feel, though, about Brian May from Queen? How did you feel about Brian May's solo on that song? And did it, like, feel odd to you, or did it just blend right in?
It just blended right in. Again, that's something, like, I've never really... I first had this on cassette, and I don't remember there being many... At the time, it was like when cassettes were, like, getting very bare bones. So I don't remember many credits or anything, reading anything that interesting in the liner notes. Mm-hmm. So actually, I had no idea he was even on this album.
Right. Yeah, yeah, that's one of those things that made me kind of long for more Tony Iommi, Brian May collaborations, I guess, because, like, you listen to these older records and you find out about these guest appearances that happen, in some cases years later, and it's just really cool, and those are iconic songs, and, like, you just wish that, like, you know, I guess the bands in those days had been a little more incestuous, because then you would have heard, you know, more of this player with that player, and I don't know, I really find stuff like that incredibly cool. So here's another thing. Ozzy ended up releasing 2 songs. I'm wondering if you know more about this backstory, actually. So Ozzy ended up releasing 2 songs with the same names as songs to appear on Headless Cross, and Call of the Wild was originally titled Hero, and Devil and Daughter was originally titled Devil's Daughter. So, do you happen to know the backstory behind why those song titles were coming out with both projects at the same time?
I have no idea about the story. And again, like with the song Hero, I had no idea about that one. but because like that's the time when I was like really getting into metal, and I was like getting into everything, and Ozzy has always been one of my favorites. So I had the Headless Cross and No Rest for the Wicked both on cassette, very close together, and I was like, what the fuck? One's got Devil's Daughter, one's got Double Hand Daughter.
Yep.
What's going on?
Yeah.
I really found it really bizarre, because those two songs especially, like, the song titles are still really close, and
right.
I have no idea what the deal is. If there's some kind of story or something that they're both referencing, which wouldn't be out of line, because we're talking about people who are all, like, the same age group, from the same area, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Even though I've been at it for a while, we've got people like kind of coming from the same place with things, and you have musicians that are going back and forth between Black Sabbath and Ozzy too.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I just wasn't sure if those were songs that Ozzy had originally written and Tony Martin learned, because I was under the impression that Tony Martin wrote the majority of the lyrics, if not all the lyrics, on Headless Cross.
Yeah, he probably did. I mean, it really could just be a coincidence. The song Hero, especially.
Well, yeah, they're generic. They're generic song titles. I agree with that. So it could just be a coincidence. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, but I have no idea. Like, I never even thought about a story about them. But I always found it a weird coincidence. Like it never. Devil and Daughter and Devil's Daughter are two songs. I always think of the other song when I'm hearing one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Always, without fail. And I'm always just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why? It really is. I find it real interesting. It'd be really cool to hear a story, but I doubt anybody's ever going to ask anybody about that. Because even in the realms of their catalogs, these aren't songs that people really care about. Even though they're both fucking great songs.
But they're not front runners, and they're not those big singles, you're right.
Right, but
yeah. So yeah, super confusing, and I'm glad you ran into that as well. Also, those are the only, this is another like nitpick thing again, I talk about fade outs a lot, so those two songs are also the only songs on Headless Cross that don't end on a fade out. So, by this point in the catalog, do you find all the fade outs redundant, or do you just not care, it doesn't bother you?
It doesn't bother me. I guess it must be such a Black Sabbath thing that I just get to a point where I stop noticing it.
Right. What I like about the fade outs is that, especially with Tony Martin, is he's doing ad-lib in all of them. So, it's not, whatever he has going on, it's not in the liner notes. He's just, freestyling, and it's really cool to hear him wig out, especially at the end of the title track.
Yeah.
He just finds different ways to go back and forth with chanting Headless Cross, and he hits these incredible notes even when the song's fading out. I love it. So the album cover for Headless Cross was designed by Kevin Wimlett, and how would you rank this cover against others? And personally, I think it's definitely one of the better ones because it's simple to the point and it's ominous. It actually matches the music.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fucking great album cover. Like, this and, like, Mob Rules and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath are all, like, pretty fucking close as being amazing album covers.
Right.
It's definitely, it might be the best album cover as far as things that I like. Even though I could probably, depending on my mood, that could change. But I mean, there's something about this album cover that just really fucking works. Especially from the time period it came out, it's perfect.
Even though I think even in the mid, I'm gonna bring up the Forbidden album cover, and that's a cover I actually really enjoy, and I love the cartoon Reaper. I love that style of drawing as well, and with it's a cool illustration. And I think even in the mid-'90s when Forbidden came out, I mean, the Grim Reaper look was already generic and overused. I just think it's a really cool illustration. But, no, Headless Cross is definitely up there. I love the Reaper stuff. It's kind of recurring. So I think Headless Cross, Forbidden, and Dehumanizer, I think those three collectively are my favorite album cover. So what's your favorite song on this record and your least favorite song? If you can even be bothered to, or if you can even come up with a least favorite, because I know how much you love the record.
Yeah, Headless Cross, the title track is definitely my favorite song on this record. Again, another Sabbath song where the title track is really what went. And again, there's not a song on here I can't really pick a least favorite. They're just like all such. It's just like a banger from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great flowing album. It's just a very well thought out, well written album.
It really is. It really is, and each song is so unique, right? Like, I mean, as you're listening to it, like, if you think back on songs and you get a riff or a vocal melody stuck in your head, you're not going to get one song confused with the other. I just think they're all so different. I think...
But they all fit together. It's like the closest that Tony Iommi has come to writing something like a Black Sabbath album like he did in the 70s.
Right.
Like musically, like where it's like it's rocking, but it's also dark and heavy.
Yeah.
It's got that, I don't think any other Black Sabbath album besides this one and the 70s ones really have that, like, really good balance like this has and slow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it almost sounds... It has a raw quality to it, like raw energy. Like it almost sounds low effort though because of that. Like they didn't even try to write a masterpiece. They just kind of, they got in the room together and did their thing and wrote these songs and it just is a masterpiece. It just has such a natural flow to it that way. And I love I think Devil and Daughter. I think Devil and Daughter is my favorite. I mean, I went with the title track for a long time, but, like, I've been sitting with this record waiting to do this episode for 2 weeks. So, like, after listening to it front to back, I think Devil and Daughter is the one that gets stuck in my head. It's the biggest earworm for me, and it's super... I just, like... It's a little more upbeat than the title track, so it's a little more, like... motivational, I guess, even though it's such a dark song lyrically, and it's got that satanic undertone to it, like all the songs do. It's pretty cool. Even Black Moon is just a super fun song.
Yeah.
So again, like when we first talked about bringing you on the series, Headless Cross seemed like it was the biggest deal to you, or the thing that you were most excited about at the time. So I wanted to ask you how you first came across this record and what your first impression was and why it stayed so high up on the list for you. Like, what's your story with this record?
So when I was getting into metal, I had the Headbangers Ball. And one night they did a Rock Blocks edition early in where they would play, like anywhere between 2 to 4 videos in a row of a band. And they did a Black Sabbath block. And Headless Cross came on. I was like, this is really good. And I was really surprised because, with me getting into metal, I had a couple of my older friends who were very opinionated and trying to push me in one way. And then when it came to Black Sabbath, my uncle really liked Black Sabbath. And to him, after Ozzy was gone, Black Sabbath was done. He was very opinionated about that, And,
I think that's a lot of people, unfortunately.
And through, getting into stuff, I would get, I acquired a few of the Black Sabbath albums without Ozzy because they were, in sale bins. So I would just grab them. This is the first Black Sabbath album without Ozzy that I intentionally sought out and bought, at full price on cassette. Because I saw that video and I was like, this is really good. And I was really nervous about buying the album, though, because I didn't know how, as a kid, I didn't have that much money to spend. I had to be picky and choosy about what I bought, And I loved it. No regrets. It's an amazing album. And it really, and it also, really fits, again, it's an album of its time. to me, like, listening to something like this, along with Ozzy's No Rest for the Wicked, the first Danzig album, and the self-titled Trouble album, these are all albums that really, like, are a very defining moment for me as a young metalhead. And things I really, like, grasped onto and what I really liked. And it's very important to me in that aspect. You know, it really kind of helped break down that not Ozzy singing barrier, probably more so than the Dio albums did.
Sure, yeah.
Honestly, I can't remember what made me buy Mob Rules. Again, I think I got Mob Rules because A, it was cheap, and B, the album cover was awesome. Like, I didn't fucking know who Dio was. Sure. You know, that didn't matter, man. I was just like, oh, this looks cool, and it's $3. Okay, I'll buy it. You know? So this was like the first, like, non-Ozzy Black Sabbath album I really took a chance on, like a real chance on, you know, paying like $10 for a cassette, as opposed to getting a deal somewhere, just buying like what I knew or taped for my uncle's collection.
Yeah, I have this record on cassette, CD, and vinyl. I love this record.
I don't have my cassette anymore, but I do have it on CD and vinyl.
Yeah, I've found two variants. I've found two covers of this on cassette, two different I mean, it's the same image, but one is like sand colored and the other is like a couple shades of purple. So, I love this record. I started a mini collection of this record, but this is going back maybe, this is before I even started this series. I found the two different cassette variants. But I mean, I grabbed the CD and the vinyl after I started doing this. But no, that's really cool. And interesting statistic about Tony Martin is that he is the second longest running vocalist in Sabbath history, and nobody knows who the fuck he is. And nobody knows these albums or talks about them. That's why I hope at least some people listen to this shit. Or at least, I know there are a million Black Sabbath podcasts. I just hope that, like, more people eventually appreciate what Tony Martin did with this band. Because I think he was on 5 albums, right? 5 albums total?
I see. Eternal Idol, Headless Cross, Tear, Cross Purposes.
And Forbidden.
Forbidden, yeah, 5 albums.
Yeah.
And they're all, I mean, he's got a solid run with Black Sabbath. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame that it's not recognized as much as it should be. I think over the years more people have come around to it. Like, I follow him on Facebook, and he definitely has a fair amount of followers, and he's still keeping busy. He's got a new album coming out soon, which should be, and he just did vocals for some other band. I can't think of what they're called, but it's a killer track. He still has it. So, yeah, he's a great singer, and definitely more people should pay attention to him.
No, I didn't know he had an album coming out. I will definitely look into that, like, right now. Like, literally right now, I'm typing it in. No, I'm stoked about it. And I still have to listen to Bill Ward's solo stuff, too. I haven't yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're missing out. You're just cheating yourself.
Oh, obviously. Yeah, I know it. I know it by now. We've been talking about this long enough. I started this in February. In the beginning, I swear, this Sabbath series, in the beginning, I thought I was going to find a couple co-hosts with open availability, and we were going to do 20 episodes in 2 months. That's what my ignorant ass thought back then, but it's going on, it's going on 7 months, and if it takes a year, it takes a year. This has turned into a huge part of my life, so I'm really, really excited to keep going. I couldn't be happier about it, because it's given me that much more time to sit with these records, so.
Yeah.
All right, so do you have anything to add? What didn't we cover? What did we miss?
Man, I think we covered most of it. Like, I know it didn't last long, but I don't really have much. Like, I don't have anything negative to say about this record. And like, even like as we hinted at in like some of these other Black Sabbath albums, when you're listening to them the way we do, you kind of find things to criticize, even if you love the album. And again, but this one, it's like really just it's a perfect album. Like I did, if you for some reason never ventured outside of the Ozzy Dio eras of Black Sabbath, this is the album to take your chance on.
I mean, it's funny. There are a lot of people out there who don't even realize Dio sung for Sabbath.
Yeah, it's
Ozzy Sabbath or nothing. Like that's like anything but Ozzy, and it's an alternate timeline.
Yeah. And I don't get it, because it's like I said, I fucking love Ozzy. Like, I will still buy, to this day, every Ozzy new album he puts out.
Sure.
And so it's like, I love Ozzy, I love Dio, but man, there's so much other great sound. I mean, every album's not, like, amazing, but there's standout parts to every album. There's some great songs that you're just, like, missing if you're not checking it out. Mm-hmm. And Tony Martin is just such, like, an amazing vocalist. And, like, he's got the range, he's got the ability, he knows what he needs to do, and he really nails it on this album.
Yeah.
And they all do. It's just, like,
He does a lot of really cool stuff. There are two verse sections that stick out in my mind when talking about Tony Martin's vocal melodies, and one is the verse in Devil and Daughter, and the other is the verse in Kill in the Spirit World. And they're both kind of, upbeat, catchy parts, like, really, like, catchy, almost dramatic vocal melodies. He hits a lot of vocal melodies that I wasn't expecting. Like, it's, even for the 80s, even for the late 80s, like, he does some unexpected melodies, at least they were unexpected for me in both of those songs. But once you hear it, that particular melody is locked in your brain, and it becomes catchy. Because you know what I mean, like, sometimes you'll hear a melody, but just by a band, it could be any song, any style. You'll hear a melody, and you know where it's going, because you've heard it a million times. But, like, Tony Martin has really interesting, like, note choices. But then once you hear it, that melody stays with you. He's really good at writing these earworms that are very unique. And I thought that was really cool to just have come across on an album finally, by someone other than Ozzy or Dio.
Yeah, and maybe he felt like he had something to prove on this album too,
Sure.
Like we said, Eternal Idol, he kind of came in at the last minute and did it, so he could probably only contribute so much as far as ideas go. And this record, it was like, he was there from the beginning, and he was probably like, can you imagine being in that position? Like, I made it to a second Sabbath album, which at this point in time is a pretty big fucking deal.
Yep. Yeah. And, I made it to album 2. This is huge, folks.
Yeah, so to him it's probably like, I really have to, prove myself, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was his attitude on this, because, he fucking does. It's just like, he goes all out, and it works. It's perfect.
Yep.
It's a perfect metal record.
That it is, and I can't think of a better note to end this on.
Yeah.
That is the perfect closing statement. So, next, we'll be talking about Tear.
Another great one.
And this time we're moving from Satanism to Nordic mythology, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and even though it's not as, we can get into it when we get to that episode, but again, I think Tear has a really good album cover. It kind of escapes me because it's not very stand out,
Oh, it's subtle.
But it's a really good cover, though.
Yeah, it's very subtle, but it does the job.
Yeah,
because we're dealing with runes, aren't we? Aren't we dealing with Viking runes or something? I can't visualize it right now.
Oh, something like
that. I'll take a deep dive into that one before we get into the discussion. But yeah, I'm very excited about Tear.
Yeah, again, another great one. Like, these two albums, They're like the fucking Tony Martin albums, Headless Cross and Tear.
Yep.
They're just fucking like so fucking good.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, until next time, I hope you have a pleasant evening, and we'll be chatting.
You too, Mike. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take it easy. Thanks again.